Road America, America's National Park of Speed in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, is one of the most challenging, fast, and consequential circuits on any schedule in the dry. Welcome to a very wet Road America as we get ready for round 9 of the Pirelli GT4 America Sprint Championship. Hi, everybody. Greg Creamer alongside Calvin Fish, Ryan Marine down trackside in what has been a very, very wet pit and grid area. The rain has let up a little bit, but it is still coming down, and the conditions here, Cal, are going to be pretty interesting for this race to unfold. And we also have some pretty interesting scenarios when you look at what's happening in the points. The big question is can anybody do anything about Michael Cooper in the pro division? He's not starting up front.
He isn't, but he's on a roll right now, coming off 5 consecutive wins, going for 6 straight here today at the team's home track. They won it twice last year, so a lot of confidence in that group, and I think everyone was caught out by the weather this morning. They reverted to practice times yesterday. Michael was a bit further down the order, probably trying old tire runs as opposed to laying down a fast lap, so he's got a bit of work to do. He and his teammate who returns, Tony Gaples, great to see him back in action. He only did the first couple of rounds at Coda this season before having eye surgery. They line up on row 3 together.
Yeah, it's nice. He rolls off third in class, Tony does, in his return, obviously based on those practice times. Sort of a similar scenario in the AM category when you look at what Michael Dinan has been doing in terms of speed in the championship, and he's even farther back in this field.
Yeah, and he's had a run of 4 consecutive wins and 5 on the season, so he's got a 40-point lead. But don't discount that Reardon Racing team. They had a couple of wins at Sonoma. So we look at the track map here, just over 4 miles. It's a beautiful racetrack, as you said, very akin to some of the classic circuits over in Europe, like the Nürburgring. Lots of elevation change here, lots of long straightaways. You need straightaway speed to be a factor in race conditions, but long, very demanding brake zones and long corners where the car has to be working well with great balance.
Yeah, this place is just an outright challenge. You talked about Reardon Racing. Well, Paul Terry, who's one of the guys who has shown the ability to go door to door and sometimes door into door with Michael Dinan. They race each other incredibly hard. He starts outside of the front row. I mean, obviously, again, based on those practice times, but boy, is he well placed to maybe be able to do something. Dinan's starting back in 12th overall, 9th in the AM category, but in the sprint. The Sprint X qualifying session that was held earlier, that was stopped at a certain point during the session because it was wet. Dinan topped most of it by a big chunk and ended up second in that session. So he's got speed today in the wet.
He's got speed, he's got work to do, and one thing we've noticed from Michael Dinan this year, he leads the championship by 40 points, and he's done that through race victories, certainly, as we mentioned, but also just more poise, more discipline, more, structured racing. So I'm sure he's going to have the guys on the pit box there at Flying Lizard Motorsport talking to him through this race. If he's got a good race car, there's lots of good overtaking opportunities here at Road America, finding the grip around this place. The racetrack's a little bit more worn, so that typically when you get that outside line where the track is more abrasive and got more aggregate, will bite into the tires a little bit more. So look for some very much a variety of racing lines here as we get ready for the first wet racing laps of this weekend.
But you think you have to be a bit brave to run the carousel at speed in the dry on its normal line, to ramp the outside of that, knowing what's just off the edge of the track in the wet, to have the discipline to believe in it, that's where the grip is. That's a whole different ball of wax.
Well, it's a bit different to the Richard Petty thought of running the cushion. There's less, you don't have as far to hit the wall. Well, around the carousel there, you don't have far to get into trouble because the grass is wet and you're going to go for a ride.
All right, field has been released. They will get 1 formation lap due to the length of this circuit. However, little change in the starting procedure because of the conditions. It is so wet. Getting reports from some of the drivers that, especially from the kink down to Canada Corner, turn 12, there's lots of water back in that area. They're going to start this one. The first lap will be under yellow flag. Then we'll go racing. Clock will start, but we're going to run 1 lap under caution.
Yeah, I think that's very smart by the stewards to make that decision, just to give everyone another reconnaissance lap, effectively, to see where the really deep puddles are, bring up the speed gradually, certainly behind the pace car. Yes, you can see where the standing water is, but until you hit that at 100 or 130 miles an hour, it's a totally different kettle of fish, no pun intended. So it'll give the drivers just a chance to explore a little bit further and find out where the grip level is or if there's any aquaplane. It's certainly a little bit better conditions now. The skies are brightening, so it looks like the heavy stuff has passed.
There we go. Interesting story there with the number 77 Compass Racing entry. Ray Mason, originally, he was not going to be running in sprint.
That's right, and his teammate Ross Thompson had a pretty big accident here in practice yesterday and destroyed the race car. So he was concussed, so he's out of action for the rest of the weekend, but the team elected to go to the backup car, and they've actually put Ray out now in the sprint format, so we'll do all of the sprint races here this weekend, and they appreciate the series working with them and switching over to the different race. But good times for that group, Carl Thompson and the whole group there. They've got a new sponsor on board, Evolution Brew Works, which is Carlsbad base right down the road from their new workshops out there in Vista, California, and they've got Compass branded beers and drinks. So giddy up.
Yeah, that's pretty cool stuff for them. That's really exciting. I got a lot of other stories to talk about, and of course, there's always stories emanating from the grid. What are you hearing down there, Ryan Moraine?
Hi, Greg. Hi, Cal. Let's start with the weather conditions, because I think that is the dominant story here this afternoon in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. And as you alluded to, the conditions are better, at least here on the pit straight, than they have been in some time. The rain has really slackened, just a few drops now coming down, although it is quite foggy, and visibility might be one thing to talk about. But having spoken to Derek DeBoer, who was just out a little bit ago in the Sprint X session that came earlier this morning, he said that those were some of the worst conditions, scariest conditions he's ever been in. He said he was having fun, though, and really had a good lap going before that was called off. Nevertheless, it is going to be a daunting challenge for these drivers when they do take the green. One other storyline to keep an eye on, as you alluded to, the starting grid set by practice 2 times, and several of the teams that I've spoken to up and down this pit lane are lamenting the fact that they did not go out on sticker tires in that second practice session. They know they have more speed in the car than what this starting grid might indicate, and they simply just didn't go out there trying to put down a fast lap time. And so, as a consequence, we're going to have some guys starting further back. Michael Cooper, who you talked about, Jared Andretti starting quite a ways back as well. Just several of the drivers we expect to be hard chargers when we do go green.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and it certainly upset things a little bit in terms of the normal order. But then there's also the side of the story that racing could be the great equalizer, so we might see some really standout performances here. Welcoming back, great to see Jeff Courtney. Missed the most recent round all the way out in Sonoma. He's a local Wisconsin guy, and this is a track he knows incredibly well, along with loving it dearly. So we'll be keeping an eye on him. And Christopher Gumprecht, who made his debut in this series at VIR and showed some pretty solid speed. He too has returned to the championship, so it's nice to have him with us as well. We talked about Mason, of course, and looking forward to this field now. There was another driver, Jason Hall, who's racing for NOLA Sport in a GT4 sprint entry. He is a driver who's been coached by Jason Hart, part of that Jason Hart coaching program for a lot of years. He was scheduled to start. Not sure he's made it onto track at this point, and we'll have to see. It might be just, his first race in these cars, in this level of competition, in this kind of condition. They may have thought the better of it, of course. Here's Spencer Pompelli, who he's been incredibly quick this year, as he always is, Cal, but it hasn't necessarily translated into race weeks.
No, he's had 4 poles, and most of those have been won through the qualifying session. The subsequent pole positions throughout the weekend are based on your fastest lap in the first race for race 2 grid and for second race onto race 3, of course. So he's had pace in this Porsche, but when it comes to the race, it just seems that he can't quite hang with Michael Cooper in terms of the race pace under green. So I know it's been frustrating for him and the TRG LaSalle Solutions group and Kevin Butler in particular. But we'll see what happens here. I mean, rain is always the great equalizer. Spencer's one of the best drivers we have in our paddock. So he's hoping that he gets a big weekend here. If he's going to kind of that 33-point lead that Michael Cooper has, he needs something a little bit different than what he's seen in recent rounds, and maybe this wet racetrack is what he's been looking forward to.
Cooper made an interesting comment after the races out at Sonoma, where when he did the three straight there, 5th straight in a row, etc. But the interesting thing to me was he said, if I wasn't able to make that move on that first restart to get in front of Spencer, he said, because he was so quick on a free track, he said, we very well could have been looking at 3 seconds from that weekend. He said, because getting in front of him, that allowed me into the clear air, them into the dirty air. And he said, if I don't make that move, it could be a very different story in this championship. And that made a little bit of sense to me.
It does, and, it emphasizes how strong the competition is. Yeah. It emphasizes how good Michael Cooper is on cold tires. The move he did around the outside on that restart there up into turn 2 was just simply magical, and it worked out. And then for Spencer Pumpelly, you're on the back foot. Hard to, you know, fight against the McLaren on the race pace currently. So we'll see what happens there. It's horses for courses, very different race circuit. But again, as we said earlier, Michael Cooper had 2 wins here last year. So
yes.
that was just when the Black Dog Speed Shop team were getting to grips with McLaren. They had a slow start last year, Greg,
Yes,
when they switched to that platform. And it took them a while to find their feet.
Sean Quinlan doing a nice lap in that practice session, which became the session that determined this grid, and finds himself starting up in that top 5 with a really strong run in the Stephen Cameron racing machine. There's a look at Cooper, and then of course right behind him, bit of a wiggle there. Cooper exploring the limits there through the kink. There is Tony Gaples, and Tony's comeback here, especially when you find out just how extreme the surgeries and procedures that he had has been pretty remarkable. And he said missing all those races has really fired the competitive instincts in him again, and he's ready to go.
Quick clarification, when we do get green here, it's going to be the restart rules. Normally, when you get the initial green flag, you're allowed to go racing immediately. On restart rules, you have to wait for the start-finish line, because we've seen these laps behind the pace car. When we do go green, it'll be like a restart regulation, so you can't pass until you get to that start-finish line. Key as if all of the drivers are aware of that situation.
And lights out on the Acura NSX, the official safety vehicle of the SRO America World Challenge Series, and it will make its way into pit lane, and we will be looking for the green flag again. Clock has begun, and we're trying to make up a little bit of time because this race got delayed on its starts, pushing everything back a little bit. And Spencer Pumpelly going to lead them up with Paul Terry right behind, and they are looking really good here as we come to the green flag. We'll see what happens. The green flag flies, and Pumpelly immediately moves over Terry in that Aston Martin. That car's got a bit of torque, and he's going to try and do something. He'd love to get out front and lead early. The bigger story is what's up with the McLarens, and haven't really been able to do too much back there, Cal.
No, it looked like Quinlan had got bogged down a little bit. Now they go side by side through one. I believe that's Michael Cooper around the outside. Down in that brake zone for turn 3. Everyone just feeling their feet right now, finding out where the grip level is. So a nice clean start there for our pole sitter, Spencer Pumpelly, as he takes the lead early.
Yeah, he didn't have the greatest of starts at Sonoma, and obviously that's weighed heavily, I'm sure, on a driver like Spencer, and he executed beautifully there and sweeps down through beautiful part of the racetrack and heading down into the downhill plunging braking zone of turn 5. And
Tony Gaples there, I think, side by side there as they climb out of turn 5. Racetrack's in pretty good shape. We had a lot of standing water there earlier. That's Michael Dinan's had a nice start there from towards the back of the field. He now looks inside Tony Gaples as they go through turn 7.
Yeah, Dinan started 11th overall, and that would put him up into 7th.
Moved by Stavely here. He gets around Terry.
Floats the rear through turn 8 beautifully. Now heading into the carousel. And as you said, you got to run the wider line around here. That's where the grip is, but it's a matter of exquisite discipline to make it happen.
Yeah, you're just going to be feeling it out right now unless you're extremely brave. You're not going to be 100% committed because you're not sure how much grip is out there. This is where the water's been standing. I spoke to Brian Till, the steward there, as Dinah makes another move around Quinlan. So he's cutting and thrusting really early here, making his move to the front.
That was a nice move into the kink. And we talked about Dinan showing some real speed in that wet qualifying session for the Sprint X division of these cars earlier today. And he has just marched his way to the front.
Just displaying the confidence that he's driving with right now. It's just been an amazing transition. From last year, he showed pace, would get himself into trouble in race conditions, really settled down, did a lot of sim work with his teammate in Sprint X competition, Robbie Foley, who will share the car with here this weekend. And just really working on his racecraft, and with the victories has built a little bit of confidence, and you can see that in these conditions he's willing to go for it.
And Reardon Racing, Aston Martin in the hands of Jeff Burton, took a little look there at the inside of the GMG Racing Porsche of Jason Bell into 14, decided the better of it as the field now streams up the hill. And boy, he is tucked in, looking for any way to be able to go through. And visibility, Ryan had talked a little bit about that with that little bit of fog in the air, and then especially when you get into the trees here, Cal, it kind of hangs. It looks like Burton is going to slide through. Bell pushing him, though, but Burton makes it stick.
He does, and he's coming off a great win at Sonoma. So in the AM divisions, it's pretty much dominated by Aston Martins right now. They run 1, 2, 3 in the championship. And for Reardon Racing, didn't have the best start to the year, I'd say, when they made the switch to the Aston, but as you'd expect with that group, there's a lot of great technical people there who will get the most out of a race car, whatever it is, and they're now finding their speed and setup direction, and it's showing in their results as well.
Burton just made a little bit of a tactical error as he went to a normal racing line through turn 3. It's another corner you've got to run wide in the wet, which Bell did, and Bell came out with a lot bigger head of steam, but he was so quick he had to back off, and now Bell all the way off the track, hangs on. Courtney, though, gets the run. He's going to look to the inside, up into turn 6. It makes it work.
Yeah, good job both drivers there, giving each other just that necessary bit of racing room. We've seen contact there in the past coming up that climb. People are frustrated if you get kind of pushed out to the outside and want to turn back in, but just good smart driving at this early stage of the weekend. Remember, there's 3 races you want to try and get your way through.
That's the moment when Bell ran wide. He had such a great run out of 3, trying to get back at Burton. And then just carried a little bit too much speed in, and there went Courtney.
Yeah, I just wonder if, Clennon. That's a big one.
Yes, it is. That looks like exit at 8, the classic exit, run wide and come back across.
Maybe it's not as bad as I first thought now looking at the car.
And he got into the tires, not the wall. That's the good piece of news.
Just missed the tires into the concrete, I believe.
Yes. No, that's a tough hit, obviously. And if you can't drive away, they're going to have to do something, I would think, to get that car moved. Now, they can just take it, tuck it into that cutout there.
Well, one of the reasons they made the move to this Sin chassis this year was to get away from a lot of the driver aids. Unfortunately, when you got conditions like this, you'd like to have a little bit more assist through the electronics. So it just looked as Mark was coming off turn 8, low-speed corner, lots of torque and acceleration, and just looked like he lit it up and just turned it around.
Dinan continuing his charge down to the inside of Terry.
That's big. That's for the class lead.
Wow. What a drive through the field Michael Dinan has put on here. Puts him right up behind Michael Cooper.
Cooper doesn't seem like he can really hang with Pumpelly and Stavely, who run 1-2 right now.
Oh. And Dinan, his last lap was a half-second quicker than Cooper's.
So Michael's got to be smart here. Michael Cooper, in terms of recognizing what sort of pace Dinan has. He's the championship leader. Well, they're both championship leaders, but for Cooper, if he doesn't have the pace of that Aston in these wet conditions, there's nothing wrong with letting him go. It's not going to affect your points total on the day.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And the other thing here is normally in these races, the fast lap of the race, which of course establishes where you start for the next race, usually happens early on when the tires are at their freshest, and as the race unfolds, nobody really gets close to this time. So as this track continues to dry, we can see that continually change as well.
Well, you can, but then there'll be that crossover point, and I don't see it happening with the amount of rain that's evolved over the course of this morning and how wet the racetrack is. But sometimes if it dries out, then the wet weather tire is going to start to go off, so there's a peak in terms of achieving that lap, and maybe that's what Michael Cooper is looking for, just where you get to that point where the wets are still effective in terms of dealing with the racetrack, but the track is at its driest to give you that fast lap.
There's Pumpelly.
He has that fast lap right now to 2:35.6 compared to a 2:36.8 for Cooper. Excuse me, 2:36.2 for Cooper.
You see they're zooming in there. There's that little area where you get a little bit of water, standing water, that will drift across the track. And you want to go through where there's the least of it, and you want to make sure you're going straight when you get there. And now full course caution is called, no doubt, for the stranded vehicle of Mark Clennon.
And you're reluctant to go full course yellow here because it's such a long lap. You eat a lot of the clock up, obviously, but they'll try and get a car moved or see if it can get out of the way under its own power, but not the situation.
Yeah, especially in these conditions. Last thing you want to do is take any level of risk here. So it's Pumpelly over Stavely, 1-2 overall in pro. Cooper now moves up to 3rd overall, 3rd in pro. Then it's the 210 of Dynan and the 59 of Terry, the Flying Lizard. And Reardon Aston Martin's running 1-2 in the AM class, 4th and 5th overall. Sean Quinlan, 6th overall, hanging into that top 6 right now in the number 119 BMW from Stephen Cameron Racing. Then Tony Gaples right there in 4th. Welcome back, Tony.
Yes, and he said how frustrated he's been by just watching the racing. We talked about his eye surgery. I thought it was just one eye, but there was a report went out today that it was in fact 2 eyes, both eyes, and
both eyes, and like 7 procedures.
I think Tony's only got 2, but yeah, both eyes and 7 surgeries. So
yeah.
It's a big process he went through, but great to see him return on his home turf. The team has had so much success here. And in GT4 competition, 35 victories, I think it is now, 35, 36 wins. So
pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's 4 driver championships, 3 team and manufacturer titles along the way. So they continue to excel and execute.
Yeah, most wins in GTS, GT4 category in World Challenge history. Number of driver championships, number of team championships, helped number of manufacturers to titles. And let's get down to the pits and hear what we can from Ryan about Mark Leonard.
Had a chance to check in with the team guys, and they said first and foremost that Mark is all right. He was able to report that over the radio to them, and then they went on to say that it seemed like he was stuck in the grass. They weren't sure just to what extent the car was damaged, but they do have some optimism that it can be repaired and hope to be back out on the track tomorrow. But first and foremost, the good news is that it seems like Mark, at least according to his report to the team, is doing all right after the incident that brought out this yellow.
Oh, thanks very much, Ryan. Indeed, that is the best possible news. And it looked to me, Cal, like when he came across, he got into the tires, and then the car pivoted into the wall. So I'm hoping that first impact with the tires took a lot of the energy out. And so hopefully then the damage is not going to be too deep into that chassis.
Yeah, because it's a triple header weekend, so it can really dent your hopes for the championship if you get involved in the first race.
Take a look.
Yeah, I don't see the tires kind of wobbling around though, because you see the divots in the grass look like it's going to end up in the tires. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, we didn't have quite a wide enough angle on it to really be able to definitively tell. And it's a real shame, obviously. We talked about at Sonoma. He had some problems there a couple of times, but he had speed there to the point where for that third race, he had fast lap in the second race, started on the pole, lost a few spots, then came right back at everybody. I mean, he was as racy as I've seen him in a while. It was great.
When Mark is on, he's a really quick driver. It's just trying to get that consistency where he can perform for the whole 50-minute race. And he's building on that, and the team's working with him, and he recognizes it. You know, I mean, he's under no false illusions. He knows that some of it is down to him, just in terms of being more disciplined and focused throughout the course of the whole green flag run.
Look there at Ray Mason and Frank Gannett, the 77 McLaren, the black and orange Compass Racing entry, and then the white, black, and somewhat orange entry from Ian Lacey, G3 Racing, the Mustang, Frank Gannett. And interesting story for Mason. You know, we talked about the incident his co-driver had, and the switch. So I don't know how many laps this car has on the track as they went to the backup car. So that's going to be part of the tale as well. But talk about a guy who's evergreen. Ray has been around for a long time, and just continues to love racing, and he's always been one of the quicker AM guys.
He has, and he enjoys working with Carl Thompson and the Compass Racing team, who have, they're based in Toronto, up in Canada, and with the COVID situation, they had a lot of drama getting their crew backwards and forwards for the North American events, and set up a temporary base down in Miami for a couple of months and put all of their guys up in a condo, rented a condo, so they didn't have to go backwards and forwards. But now the paperwork stuff has been sorted out, so it's a little bit easier for those team members to transition back to their homes in between events. And now they're fully focused on getting their race shop, their new race shop, up and at 100% operating level over in Vista, California. But for Ray, he was actually here at another event last weekend, so he should be pretty familiar with the racetrack and that car from recent events here.
And that weekend was a bit damp as well, wasn't it? So a little bit of familiarity there. I did want to also just make note that blue Mercedes AMG GT4, that's Christopher Gumprecht, the number 79 entry, who showed up at VIR and made a bit of a leap running basically his own team, his own program, and showed some pretty good speed there. I don't know how much time he's got in these cars in the damp, and so he's back in the pack just a little bit today. But I suspect rest of the weekend supposed to be absolutely near perfect weather, sunny mid-70s type stuff. I think we'll see.
Yeah, and these conditions, okay, some drivers love the wet, some people hate it. You know what I mean? I always found if you weren't good at it, get out there and practice. And
Yes.
most people shut the door on the trailer awning and you know, want to go and have a cup of coffee when it's raining out. But you're not going to improve your skills if you don't get out there and experience it. But the track conditions right now are pretty much ideal. Doesn't look like it's going to dry out, so we're very consistent. Yeah, there's a little bit of spray and stuff, but there's not a lot of puddling. So you can really attack the racetrack right now and just find out how to get the lap time out of it.
One of the things that can help as well, this is a long track to do it, is a track walk. And oftentimes, you know, they've got a scheduled track walk. It's tough to get out at the track like this morning when it was raining to go for a walk. But I mean, just to sometimes just scuffing your feet, walking across the track, you can find out where there's a little bit of grip. And once in a while, I learned this one at Brainerd when I was driving. I missed the brake pedal in the wet and goes slicing into turn 10 and suddenly go, oh, the outside here is really grippy.
Yeah,
You know?
it really is. Yeah, it's like going from a marble floor onto some, you know, sandpaper. Just really picks up the grip there. And if you can find that and get comfortable, right, and again, you don't have the margin for mistake. It's not like you can slide across the racetrack and catch it before you get to the grass. So you're right there already when you're running the cushion.
Well, I was thinking we might be able to see the lights go out and get a green flag start, but this is a little bit too late generally. Now, the stewards do have the authority to say, all right, lights out, we're going. But normally if the lights haven't gone out by the time you get over to the carousel area of the safety car, you're going to have one more lap. Look like they pretty much had Glenn Sin R1 GT4 up on the back of the tilt bed. Not quite. So one more lap, I'm guessing, here. So we'll still have half the race to unfold. And with this field bunched up, now we'll get to see who's racing ready to go.
Yeah, and the skies are brightening, and if we don't get any more rain, it's going to make it interesting, not so much for the end of this race, but the upcoming TCR, TC, and TCA battle. They could be in between tires here in terms of making that decision for their event, and certainly for the Sprint X competition a little bit later in the day. Could end up with a dryish track.
Well, that always makes things interesting. And you know, that Sprint X race where you do a driver change, but you don't change tires. And if you make the decision to start on wets, I mean, you could be in real trouble if it doesn't rain again. So.
Yeah, I chatted to Brian Till in terms of that situation arising today, and he said he had to think it through, but I think it's going to be allowable to change tires during that dedicated mandated pit stop. Normally it's just a driver change, but if you need to switch over to a different tire to suit the racetrack, you're going to be allowed to do it, but we'll get clarification on that before green.
That would certainly make sense. I look forward to hearing the official word on that.
Racing is all about the what ifs, right?
Absolutely,
ahead of the
completely.
curve.
It's interesting. I'm looking at those lap times just to determine who's going to do what when, and right now Pompelli still has that fast lap at that 2:35.6, but Michael Dinan is the only other guy to get below 2:36, and he's turned to 2:35.8, which would put him on the pole in the AM category and by a chunk. However, as we've been talking to now, not running hard here, might obviously these wet weather tires, as this track, we're not seeing that big amount of spray coming off, so you can overheat these very, very soft compound tires. All this time under caution is going to help preserve that. And as the track is a little bit drier now, there is the possibility that we're going to see these times in terms of best laps start to tumble just a little bit. We'll keep tracking that for you, but I'll tell you, that drive by Dinan, that was just absolutely superb. 11th to 4th in the Class League.
Yes, and cars working well. I think they've really found the sweet spot with the setup on the Aston Martin. And as we said, Michael's just full of confidence right now. He looked good in that Sprint X practice session this morning. So we expected him to fly, but he didn't waste any time, did he?
Yeah, no, he did not. There's your top 3 overall, all pro cars. Pumpelly, Stavely, Cooper, then Dynan with Paul Terry. And then there is Quinlan, then Gaples.
I was going to say, on that low camera shot, you could actually see the outside line being a little bit rougher and more aggregate versus the smooth racing line around the inside of the carousel there.
Keep in mind that silver Aston Martin with that black stripe, it won the 3rd of the 3 races in the AM class out in Sonoma. That's Jeff Burton, that Burton Lumber entry. And he has been on form this year. He's going to looking for every puddle out there, looking to cool those tires off.
Well, that's the key with the wet weather tires and like the tread blocks. Once they start to overheat, it's going to feel like you're driving on ice. So you think, oh, it's wet, I need a wet weather tire. But when they overheat, they really go in the other direction in terms of giving you grip. So it's important that you try and keep those cooled down. So if this racetrack starts to dry out, you'll see drivers looking and searching for those puddles just to cool them down momentarily down the long straightaways.
Here's a good look at Wisconsin's Jeff Courtney, the Wreck Stuff Racing. Kenda Tire Mercedes, ran the Maserati for a lot of years. I bet this weekend he's glad he's in the Mercedes with those driver aids.
That's right. Maserati, kind of one of the old school GT4 cars, so didn't have all the electronics to help the drivers in these type of conditions.
Acura NSX heading to pit lane, and Pumpelly will bring them up for the restart. Stavely, Cooper, he's got 2 pros right on his 6 now. We'll see how this one plays out. When that green flag flies, late
Spencer
green
brings
here.
him up super slow. He wants to get into the sweet spot of the torque of that Porsche motor and doesn't have such a long run in the turn.
Oh, look at Cooper's run.
He timed that perfectly. Not allowed to make a pass on a restart until you get to the stripe, and he's right there. Now he goes to the outside on Spencer Pumpelly down into turn 1. How hard will he push it? He's cleared him. What a move.
Stavely going to square up underneath as Pumpelly slides through the exit of 1, heading down into 2. Oh, Burton, big spin.
Not sure if he caught anyone. He may have got away with that one. Michael Cooper just caught everyone. I mean, Spencer brought him up really slowly, but just allowed Michael to get a huge run. So Spencer's move on Stavely was a good one, but he didn't account for Michael's move from the 3rd position into the lead.
Well, once Cooper gets in front, once again, everybody is, look at this, Dynan on Stavely. This is the battle for 3rd overall. Stavely in a little hot, and he's gone.
Yeah, he got those right side tires on the paint as he started to turn in, got the yaw in the car, nowhere saving that one. He come out there real slowly so he doesn't get buried. Fortunately, with the wet weather, it kind of compacts the gravel a little bit. He might have a chance of getting out there.
There's your leader now, Cooper, heading down into turn 8. And Terry now starting to attack on Dynan just a little bit.
But Pumpelly sitting there thinking, how did that just happen?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he was under control, had a nice little cushion to Stavely at the time. He was running back in the 2nd position before we had the yellow, and suddenly he looks at the championship leader, a man who he's trying to cut into in terms of that points gap, is in front of him once again.
Yeah, the frustration has to be just palpable inside that car. This is an interesting opportunity for Terry because we watched Dynan's run up through the pack, and now Terry, tucked right in behind Dynan, is going to see just where Dynan has been running and where he's getting that grip and the like, and we'll see if Terry is able to find a little something there as well.
Yeah, they're braking in the middle of the road as opposed to drivers left there, trying to get most of the deceleration done in the middle of the road. It's just you're getting more bite when you get on the brakes. You're not as likely to lock up, even though, of course, you're ABS with these GT4 cars.
Now Burton's got to work his way back up through the pack here. As he's dropped to the back, Gumprecht was able to slip around Jason Bell, the number 2 GMG Racing entry. So Gumprecht and that blue Mercedes now up into the top 10. Gumprecht has gone around Courtney as well. What a restart lap by Gumprecht.
I think Gaples has had a good restart lap here as well. He may be up in the top 3 years. So Tony Gaples moves up to a 3rd. So they lead in the Pro Division and have a podium run potentially for the Black Dog Speed Shop group as Dynan closes in on Pumpelly for 2nd overall. Still holding that AM lead, of course.
Through turn 3. Let's go back and take a look at that restart, Cal, and watch Cooper. There's the green, and Cooper was on it. He timed it.
He just had a run, and he obviously had it in the right gear in terms of the sweet spot for the acceleration, and just cuts across and goes around the outside, much like he did at Sonoma on what was, in fact, a restart for race 1, and sweeps to the front. Stavely gets a good run there as Spencer's sliding through turn 1 and knee. You see the spin by Jeff Burton. Unfortunately, didn't get involved with anyone else.
As soon as he got those rights up on that curve, especially the rears, and made the downshift, it just popped around, didn't it?
It did. There was no saving that one, and I think he was just trying to get in there so deep and focused on Michael Dynan making that move down to the inside. Just lost track of where the right side and outside tires were. See Michael turning in a little bit later through that turn 8 apex, looking for the grip.
And for Stavely, who was last year's AM champion, in his first season as a pro, that's the first really little misstep we've seen him make, isn't it?
You don't see him make many mistakes. That's for sure. Look at Dynan. He is committed.
He's unbelievably willing to ramp that outside and has the grip and exit speed to show for it.
No one wants to run the outside line through the kink, though.
Yeah.
you need the biggest radius you can create through there, whatever the grip level is.
Oh, radius.
Yeah.
Boy, Dynan has been impressive. Not just the season, certainly, but up there challenging a driver like Spencer Papelli for Dynan. I mean, this is just pinging this confidence.
It is, and he's got everything's working for him. He's found a car and a platform that he's more comfortable with. He's got more experience now. He's now able to really tap into all of the experience that he has within that group with Flying Lizard Motorsports, with Jim Bell, who's just an excellent engineer. You got Darren Law there, Thomas Blam. All of the backbone of that team is just feeding him, and he's a sponge right now. He's got Robbie Foley, who's one of the most outstanding young talents we have in our sports car paddocks right now, who raced here just a couple of weeks ago in similar conditions. So he can tell him, look out for the wet here. This is where you can find grip, and just deliver all of the notes before you even get involved in the race here today. Ray Mason is having a really nice run here.
Yes,
5th in class, 7th overall. This is a tremendous job.
Yeah, Ray he goes about it very calmly, doesn't he? And he's generally a really smooth driver, and in these kind of conditions, that just pays massive dividends. Oh, look at this. It's Burton now looking at Courtney. This is her 6th in AM, 8th overall. Courtney able to stave him off at this point. Then Bell.
Another busy weekend for Jason Bell.
Yeah.
Running in the Sprint X. He and Andrew Davis been very quick here this weekend, so they could definitely be a factor for a win in that later this afternoon. And also running in the GT Sports Group in his new Porsche GT2 machine as well. So I think it'll be another 8-race weekend for him.
It will. Yep, absolutely. And he has been just stringing together podium finishes as of late. So Gumprecht on that last lap had some sort of an issue. His lap suddenly was a 3-minute 3, and he's dropped all the way back to 10th in class. As Mason now starting to attack on Quinlan just a little bit. Burton starting to work Courtney over through turn 8.
It looks like Jeff is...
Mason underneath Quinlan.
Wow.
I think he made it work.
He is feeling it.
Oh, and look at that, Burton right around the outside of Courtney.
Yeah, I was about to say before you saw Ray making a move there that Burton looks to be a lot more confident in his machine right now, willing to push a little bit more than Courtney was. You can kind of tell.
Ooh, into the kink.
Yeah, he's on the move right now, recovering from that spin nicely. Sometimes that can spook you and take you a lap or two to kind of get your confidence back, but Jeff Burton's done a nice job of making some moves here.
All right, well, as we're watching this great battle heading down to Canada Corner, let's head to the pits.
Well, you were wondering what might have happened to Christopher Gumprecht on that last lap, and I just saw him make a pass down the pit lane, so I asked an official, hey, was there a penalty issue? Did they say, yes, it was a drive-through penalty, a pass before the control line on that restart, and so that's what caused him to have that slow lap that you saw in timing and scoring. He was serving a drive-through penalty.
Oh, thank you very much, Ryan. That's unfortunate because he really has been showing some pace here since this has gone back to green flag here. There he is right now, working through the kink. In that CG Racing Mercedes AMG. Quinlan and Courtney. As Burton has gone around by both of them. Boy, he's on the move.
Yeah, Mason is flying. He's currently fourth, about 4 seconds behind Tony Gaples, but his last lap was nearly 2 seconds faster. So Tony's going to have to respond to hang on to that podium on his return after a few months away from racing.
I'll tell you, Paul Terry has followed Dynan, and he's apparently learned, because that last lap, he just said fastest lap overall in the race at a 2:34 flat. So if that sticks, that would have him on the overall pole for tomorrow's 10th round of the championship. We'll see whether it was only 2/10 quicker though than Dynan.
Yeah, it's a lovely evolution with the racetrack right now. Everyone should be getting a little bit more confident, especially if their cars keep in balance. And you're not getting into overheating the tires, I wouldn't think, just yet. There's enough spray coming up as Pumpelly has now caught Michael Cooper.
This is interesting.
And he has to make it happen. He cannot afford for Michael to spread that gap any further.
Pumpelly's best race lap, marginally by a couple of hundredths of a second faster than Cooper's at this stage.
Let's not forget, it's a 14-point swing between the two leaders in terms of who gets the win.
Yes.
7 points between first and second, and obviously you gain 7 and the other person loses 7. So it's a massive moment here in terms of where Spencer Pumpelly can come out of this race in the championship deficit. Cooper wins, well, guess what? He's going to be 40 points behind. If he can get by Cooper, he's only 26 behind.
That's a huge swing, yes. And with the speed we've seen from Dynan, it's all Spencer, his best option right now is just run fast laps, get away from Dynan. But with a little over 11 minutes to go and seeing less and less spray coming off the tires around this track.
You could see Spencer there go to the inside there on the run to turn one. It wasn't to defend or really look for a move on Michael. I think he was just looking for the dampness in the racetrack. But as the leaders continue to improve their pace, Paul Terry continues to set fast race laps now at 2:33.052 is the fastest lap of this race. It was half a second quicker than Dynan, who he's chasing now for the class lead.
Yeah, that's a big chunk he closed up. And Dynan himself is closing, running marginally quicker than Pumpelly and Cooper.
We saw this dynamic evolve, remember, at Sonoma for both of these leading AM runners in terms of catching what was then Jared Andretti towards the end of the races and creating a problem because they couldn't get around Jarrett. So for Michael Dynan, if he can't get around Spencer Pumpelly, it's allowing Paul Terry to get ever closer before the checkered flag here this afternoon.
Interesting, Andretti not making the start in this one either. And we have not heard of any specific issues for that, but I'll tell you, in that part of the track, this is where Spencer makes up some ground.
Yeah. And he's going to be digging deep. He knows this is potentially a pivotal race in this championship season. 8 rounds to go still, so still a long way. We've got 3 more race weekends, including this one, so it's not like we're down to the wire, but he needs to start cutting into that gap that's been established with those 5 consecutive victories by Michael Cooper.
Well, he's got that LaSalle Solutions, the Racers Group, Racing Series Wines car, as close to Cooper pretty much as you can get right now. See if he's able to find a way through. Let's see. Here's Dynan. Looks like he's been able to stabilize that charge of Terry just a little bit.
Well, the problem for Spencer is it seems like the McLaren still has a little bit of an edge on the top speed. So if Michael just hits his marks and doesn't make a mistake, it's hard for Spencer to really get quite close enough into the brake zones because he's been gapped just a little bit here, I believe.
Boy, and we're seeing a couple laps ago Cooper running right tight to that wall looking for moisture for those rights. Now he's all the way to the outside looking for moisture for the lefts, trying to manage things. And here's the gap. Big gap now between these top four. And Tony Gaples running third in the AM class, fifth overall, about 2 seconds clear of Ray Mason in that 77 Compass Racing McLaren.
That could be a battle, though, before the checkered flag, because Mason continues to cut into that gap. He took another second plus out, and there you see the gap between the two McLarens there. Ray Mason just got a lot of confidence. You can see him really burying it into the brake zones. Forget about the gaps now. You can see the battle right there.
And Burton not that far adrift, although these two have actually been running laps a little bit quicker than Burton the last couple of times. Mason in particular, as you said.
Yeah, and he just looks balanced. You can see Tony there, just car's a little bit squirrely as he came off turn 3 there, and Mason's car is just locked down and really able to track nicely. Right now, with only 8 minutes to go, you're going to start to really lean on those tires, and if there's any sweetness left in them, try and use it up. Mason tries to square up a little bit here, try and get that later apex, get the run up the hill. Not quite close enough to make anything work this time around.
Up to turn 6. Very tricky corner 6, isn't it, where the track flattens out after a pretty substantial steep rise, and you have to time your braking to perfection.
You really did. It's not blind, but it certainly doesn't give you the sight line through the corner like you'd like to see. So some great subtleties with this racetrack, but certainly for Tony Gaples, he's driven thousands of laps around here. He knows it like the back of his hand and would love to return to racing with a podium run here today, but he's going to have to work for it.
Mason is making him earn it, that's for sure.
His car is working on the dry racing line, and he comes off of the carousel with a good run here. This is going to be tricky to make the move down to the inside. He pushes it. He's on a shallow angle. Can he keep it together? He's going to run wide.
Ooh, that was a full commitment run. And Burton had a head of steam built up as well. He's going to try and get by Gaples.
This is going to get really wild into the brakes.
Oh, a touch! And they're both off, and contact.
Oh, that's so unfortunate. That's so unfortunate. There just wasn't enough racing room given there. You know, Jeff had kind of lined up to the left flank, and Ray just came over onto that line a little bit to get onto the brakes for Canada corner. Just needed to give each other a little bit more room, unfortunately.
Yep. And with the two cars off and both of them getting into something a little bit solid, I don't think this is going to be a particularly quick cleanup.
No, that's really unfortunate because both those drivers were having such a good, solid day in these really tricky conditions. And you could see it evolving. You know, when Ray went for that move down the inside of Tony into the kink, you knew that it was going to get pretty feisty by the time they got to the brake zone for Canada corner. And just with it not being a straight brake zone, everyone was on their own agenda there. And unfortunately, their paths crossed right at a critical moment. It's going to hurt Spencer. Let's see us getting any more green flag time here.
That was my thought exactly. And for Spencer, I mean, he was certainly showing that there were spots on the track where he had some speed relative to Cooper. You don't force Michael into a lot of mistakes. For Terry, who was starting to really find some speed as well, that's going to be a little frustrating, I would think.
Can extend both championship leads if they can just cruise around here to the finish. Another look here. This is the move. Ray just made that inside line through the carousel work, came out of there with more speed. He's going to get pretty dicey here on that shallow approach to the kink. And Burton just gets a run on both of them, I think, as Tony just gave up to see how it's going to develop. There's a little bit more room, drivers left for Jeff. I don't think that Ray was really aware that there was the overlap there between the two cars either. I don't think it was anyone's fault. It was just really an unfortunate situation.
I think you're right. I think Ray just didn't have a sense that Burton was there.
With the rate of speed, you know, the momentum that he had more speed at that point and was coming up on him, didn't have anywhere to go with it, so slid down to the left-hand side. And there was an overlap there as they were both needing a bit more room.
Well, when Mason got inside Gaples going into the kink, Tony checked up pretty significantly, didn't want any part of that. And Burton came in just absolutely full steam.
Yeah, cleared Tony easily as they exited the kink, and then had a run on Ray as well, so it really didn't thwart his momentum any. And he ended up into that approach to the brake zone for Canada Corner, turn 12 here with a bit more speed. And I think he was just looking to stay there and maybe try and do the undercut as you come off of Canada Corner, but just they didn't give each other the necessary room there.
And Gaples, it turned out that slow line through the kink in a way was a blessing because he was far enough back that he avoided that contact and sits now third in class. With Courtney now up to fourth, Quinlan back into the top 5 and 5th, then Belle Gannett, a recovering Stavely and recovering Gumprecht, out completing the top 11. Everybody else now, Mason, Burton, and Clennon are out. Yeah, it's a shame. You really had a feeling that these last few laps could end up being really good.
Yeah, no, it's shaping up nicely. A lot of great battles potentially for the lead in both classes. And then, you know, Mason had made that run to get up on the podium. But you know that Jeff Burton was going to make it tough on Ray to get to the finish and hold down that position.
Yeah, he was just flying. These Aston Martins look like they were a great package at Sonoma, and it looks like they're equally good here, and the tracks couldn't be more different.
No, and the conditions couldn't be more different either, so seems to be working, and that's what you want. You know, going for a championship, you need a car that's got a good sweet spot where it'll work in most of the racetracks that we visit. It's not always going to be the fastest horse in the race, but just good consistency and never struggling to find a setup.
Boy, Cooper really slowing things down here, isn't he?
Well, I think what he's maybe doing, he doesn't want to have to do another lap, possibly. So he slows it way down.
There's something to that, isn't there? You use every tool in your toolbox. Here's the good news. Burton is out.
Key is going to be, can we get those two car fixed for tomorrow's action?
Yeah.
I mean, the Compass team have already worked overtime to switch to the backup car after Ray Mason's teammate that should have been in Sprint X competition, Ross Thompson, had an off at the kink and damaged the front end, so they switched to the backup car.
Here's another look at it. And right here, watch when the nose of Tony's car dips. He just breathed out of it way early, didn't even use up half the track on the exit. Here comes Burton.
He comes in there with a lot of speed, sweeps to the right-hand side of Tony. Then eases back over to the left as they get down towards the brake zone. And, yeah, I mean, I guess you'd have to lay it on Jeff if anyone. Ray really didn't move that much to the left.
I agree.
Pretty much straight line there. Have a look at it.
Well, and when you watch the line that Burton had through that little area of the track where it's really wet, he went through a pretty wet spot in that sequence. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure that car was exactly, you know, had all the grip he wanted, and it didn't look like he may have wanted to ease over a little bit, and it just wouldn't.
And it's not like you're in a cloud of spray like through the
right.
trees or something, but even so, the visibility to make those really close judgment calls around other cars is a little bit more difficult in the wet. And he just missed it by a little bit, and when the hot tire grabs onto the bodywork like that, it just kind of leaps up and over and turns Ray around as well.
Well, I think Cooper has played the yellow nicely here, too, backing off just a little bit. There's no way they're going to get around in time for there to possibly be another lap under caution. And generally, the stewards anyway will look at it and go, it'll take longer to clean up than we have in the race, so they would flag it at any point. But Cooper made sure that was academic.
He did. And again, Spencer's just got to be scratching his head like, what do I need to do to get back on top? 6 consecutive wins for Michael Cooper and the Black Dog Speed Shop.
Just incredible. Stretching the team's record for wins in this category in this series.
37 now and a 40-point lead tonight.
Yeah. Aiming toward a 4th Drivers' Championship in World Challenge competition, one in every category.
For Michael.
Yeah.
Be 5 for the team with different drivers. Lawson Aschenbach in that group.
And look at that, even some shadows now appearing.
It's supposed to be a great weekend. This front has come through and is going to leave us with cool and glorious weather. Highs in the upper 70s for Saturday and Sunday here, so perfect.
All right, here we go. The Acura NSX, the official safety vehicle of the series, going to lead the field through for Cooper, as you just pointed out. And McLaren and Black Dog at their home track, a 6th straight win on the season. Pompelli, another second-place finish. Dynan, a 3rd overall and a win in the AM category. And the Flying Lizard, Aston Martin. Terry in the Paul Terry Trucking Aston Martin, albeit from Reardon Racing. Tony Gaples, welcome back with a podium.
Yeah.
Tony Gaples and Black Dog. 3rd in the AM category. Wisconsin's own Jeff Courtney, top 5 in the AM class with a great run to 4th. In that white, orange, and blue, beautiful Mercedes right there, just going out of frame. And then Sean Quinlan for Steve Cameron Racing in the BMW. And Jason Bell in the GMG Racing Porsche. Gannett and Stavely in the 2 Ian Lacey Racing G3 Racing Mustangs. Then Chris Gumprecht in the CG Racing Mercedes. Then, of course, Mason Burton and Clennon all out when you take a look at it. But it'd be interesting to see just how this would have unfolded, obviously without the late caution, but if Stavely had not had that off too, because he was starting to show some real speed as well.
Yeah, he certainly has pace on a regular basis. Rare to see him make a little mistake like that, just getting up onto the painted curbing on the entry to turn 5, defending from Michael Dynan there. But there you see again, Michael Cooper on top, Pompelli another strong podium run and another pole position.
Yes.
And he'll actually have pole for tomorrow. His fastest lap just 7, 8 100ths quicker than Michael Cooper. So pole position for tomorrow, but doesn't give him a point, just the track position to start the race.
Here's a look at some of the highlights. At the start is Paul Terry, who qualified in that practice session to turn 2nd fast time, so got to start outside of the front row. Following Spencer through that first turn, then Stavely and Cooper on the move immediately after having started 5th up to 4th right off the bat.
Side-by-side action there between Tony Gaples and Jason Bell down in the brake zone. Everyone just feeling out these conditions in these initial laps.
Then the off for Mark Clennon at the exit of turn 8, just lost the back end of it. Then on the restart, Cooper, another amazing restart.
Yeah, and he just has that flow there. Spencer protects the inside line, but didn't really check up Michael at all, and he had the momentum to swing around the outside for turn 1.
You really have to think that inside that helmet of Pompelli when Cooper went by, he was thinking, where did he come from? Burton getting away with one, a big spin there. And then here's that moment by State.
There's no way to go with this. You can see it developing. He just got really late on the brake, just missed his turn-in point and got up on that curbing. And then this move here, great move by Ray Mason. Just really brave there, making a move to the inside on the kink off the racing line. Gives Jeff Burton this huge run down the Moraine sweep. And as they get to the brake zone, just a disaster here. Let's have another look at it. There's a bit more room to the left for Jeff to use the road there, and he just clicks into the left row quarter panel of Ray Mason and sends them off for a big ride.
And as a result, finished under caution, giving Cooper his 6th straight win on the season. And Tony Gaples adding another podium for the team with a 5th overall, 3rd in class finish in the light helmets, Black Dog Speed Shop McLaren. Pompelli 2nd overall, Dynan 3rd overall with the win in the AM category. That keeps his numbers pretty impressive as this year's unfolded, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And looking at this racetrack, it's going to be a tough decision for this next group up, the TCR, TC, TCA field. This racetrack to me is looking slicks may be the way to go. It's getting really close to that moment. Still pretty good ambient temperature out there, so this racetrack is drying rapidly.
Well, whenever you start to see those shadows as well, the only thing we don't have is a significant breeze that will help that out just a little bit, but I suspect you are onto something, as always, sir, as the field completing their cool-down lap and heading into pit lane.
Well, it was an abbreviated first race of the weekend. We saw some great action when we were green and some big statements by our championship leaders with another win for both of the Michaels, Cooper and Dynan, respectively. And Michael just got a ton of confidence. Yeah, it seemed like he was really not. You know, he's pretty unflappable there, even though he had poor track position at the start of this one, to bide his time, get that reset, get the restart, and then take advantage with his racecraft and getting it to the front.
Yep, and Dynan's charge from 11th up into the lead happened in a stunningly short amount of time.
It was more dramatic, wasn't it?
Yes. Just impressive as they head in. Of course, crews and teams taking a close look at things here. Not a lot you can do. You're supposed to get the drivers out of the cars and not touch the cars other than get them into the Parc Fermé, as they call it.
Everyone running under the new COVID restrictions, obviously, with social distancing. We do have race fans here this weekend, Greg, but they're not allowed into the racing paddock to mix with the drivers and the teams. So great to see a few fans around the corners this weekend.
Yeah, since this series restarted, it's the first time we've had some fans at the track. That is just wonderful and great for the fans, too, to be able to come out and at this absolutely glorious facility. As the track likes to say, America's National Park of Speed, and who's to disagree? It is that indeed. And again, just a huge thank you to all the teams and to the series and to the promoters. These restrictions and protocols have been put in place, and everybody honoring them, knowing that's the only way we get to come back and go racing. And everybody's doing just an absolutely superb job of that. And we'll be hearing from our two winners here in fairly short order. There you can see the touring car field behind getting ready to head out.
Yeah, and it's a shorter race. It's only 40 minutes, but I would think you'll struggle to make a wet tire survive, but I may be wrong. Wait and see what everyone's choice is.
It might be interesting as well. The TCR cars, of course, are all front drive. That's the design, but in the TC class are all rear drive. But in TCA, you've got some front drive, you've got some rear drive, and you'd think the fronts, if it's still damp, will be a little bit better early. Then things might change up a little bit. 3 different classes will be running in that one. As you can see, it's a sizable little field.
We believe they're going to get 3 separate greens, green flags between each class, just in case with the weather conditions there is an incident in the faster group ahead of you that you've got a chance to go yellow before you just go barreling down into turn 1 with the moment having occurred in front of you. So they're trying to do all the right things, but it's it's a fluid situation with the water.
Yeah.
Just trying to make the right calls.
Absolutely. It's time for us to hear from those competitors. Ryan.
Let's check in with Michael Cooper, who's now won 6 consecutive in Pirelli GT4 America's sprint competition. Take us through the move you made, though, to snag the lead on that restart. First to the inside of Drew, then the outside of Spencer.
Yeah, first off, I hope Ray Mason and whoever else was involved in that incident down there at Canada Corner's okay. Looked like the McLaren held up pretty strong, but that was a pretty big hit. On that restart, I could see Spencer through Drew's windshield, and when Spencer goes, you can go, but you can't pass till the start-finish. So when Spencer went, I went, and I got a little bit of a run on Drew, and I cleared him to the inside because he didn't cover it early enough, thankfully for me. And I just moved to the back to the outside of Spencer so that I could have a clean shot in there and be able to see really. And then I started thinking I could probably outbrake him here. And so that's just what I did. I kind of waited for him to brake, and I knew my car was stable enough that I wouldn't lose it. And just drove it in there and around the outside.
Well, we got to see what the McLaren could do in the wet today. We expect 2 more races in the dry later on this weekend. How good is this race car going to be in much different conditions?
Yeah, well, we never really got a great apples to apples comparison to everyone else in qualifying like we always do. And I think we'll be strong here. It's Black Dog's home track. Shout out to them for giving me an awesome car again. And, this is a pretty good track for the McLaren in general. So looking forward to the rest of the weekend. I think we're starting second tomorrow. So we can fight for points from there.
He is looking for that 4th championship. You can almost taste it right now.
He can, and not quite as confident as we heard him at Sonoma after the first win, saying that he couldn't be beaten here. So I think he believes that Pumpelly may have something for him here tomorrow with the Porsche, but I think he just hasn't seen the lap time here this weekend yet. But certainly, as he said, it's a good track from McLaren. They won a couple of times here last year in better conditions.
Absolutely, and looking forward to that one. Again, Dynan winning in the AM class And it's tough to tell. It looks like Terry will be starting from the class pole as we take a look at the time. So those two, that battle's going to continue, but awfully good drivers around them as well. Jeff Courtney looks like he might be lining up third. So things are looking good. Should be some great racing for the 10th round of the championship coming up tomorrow here from Road America.